You fool! Warren is dead.
Welcome to HorrorBabble. Twister is a short story by the American writer Mary Elizabeth Counselman, first published in the January 1940 edition of Weird Tales. Ghostly was the village where the newly wedded couple stopped for gasoline, and weird was their experience there. I hope you enjoy this one. Twister by Mary Elizabeth Counselman. Bob Clayton turned his head left and right to relax the tense muscles of his neck. He flexed fingers cramped from gripping the steering wheel, glanced sidewise at his wife huddled wearily in the car seat beside him. Slowing the small coupe to a standstill, he glanced at his wristwatch, then ahead at the darkening ribbon of highway. "I knew we should have stopped at that last town," he growled irritably. "What was it? Saltersburg? Now it's beginning to drizzle. The windshield wipers quit on us, and we have only one headlight, miles from nowhere. Well, this honeymoon jaunt was your idea, not mine." Switching on the overhead light, he pored over the rumpled road map, scowling. Beside him, his young bride stretched, yawned, and ran a caressive hand over the Scotty in her lap. Being a wise wife, she risked no reply but continued to gaze sleepily at the fireflies lighting the dark fields on either side of the highway. Clayton frowned as he squinted at the marked route. Tossing the map aside, he trod viciously on the starter and drove on again with a jerk. Myra Clayton, tactfully, pretended not to hear his muttered profanity. 30 miles at least to Evansboro, the next town," her husband lashed out disgustedly. "Myra, darling, I hate the thought of spending our wedding night in a cheap tourist camp." His frown cleared slightly, and he smiled at his wife, reached over to pat the terrier in her lap. "Oh, well," he shrugged. "You take a nap, dear, and I'll just keep driving until we reach a decent hotel." He sat back with a yawn, eyes fixed on the highway ahead. At the pressure of his foot, the coupe leaped forward, spearing the gathering dusk with its single headlight. Myra snuggled closer and rested her head on a tweed shoulder. Humming a popular song in duet, they drove on as night settled softly over the countryside. The highway was singularly deserted. There was no sound except the purr of the motor and the whisper of tires on wet cement. A fine rain misted the windshield. Vapor rose from the hot pavement, giving everything an eerie, unreal quality. Bullfrogs croaked dismally from the roadside ditches, as though warning them of a nameless peril that followed close behind or lurked just around the next curve. Myra Clayton closed her eyes. She opened them again with a start, feeling a difference in the motion of the coupe. Blinking at her husband, she saw that he was squinting through the windshield intently at something ahead. An unreasoning apprehension chilled her blood. She pressed closer to the solid figure of the man beside her, found herself shivering, though the night was unpleasantly warm. "Bob, what is it?" she whispered. "A crack-up?" But his cheery grin by the dashlight reassured her at once. "It's a town," he announced, relief in his tone. "Must be Evansboro, though I don't see how it could be this soon. By the map, it's a good 30 miles from Saltersburg." The Scotty stirred, sniffed nervously. Myra Clayton sat erect, patting at her hair. "Good," she sighed. "I'm so terribly tired of driving, and I know you are, poor darling. Hope we can smuggle McTavish up to the room. He howls if I leave him alone." She peered out the car window as the coupe slowed down. Against the dark skyline, darker shapes of houses loomed. But there was no light in any of them, no streetlights, no illumination at all. A devil's fork of lightning stabbing the sky at intervals, revealed a small whistle-stop town of perhaps 2,000 population. "Huh," Clayton muttered. "They certainly roll up the sidewalks early. It's only 10:30, but everybody seems to have gone to bed." He cruised along at a snail's pace, squinting out through the misted window glass. Presently, the car light picked out a weather-beaten sign, unlighted, hanging close to the roadside. Guests, it invited briefly, and Clayton braked the coupe, trying to make out the dark house beyond. Its vague bulk could be seen but dimly against the sky, Victorian in architecture, set far back from the highway. Leaping out, head down in the drizzle, he strode up a grass-grown walk and knocked at the door with growing disfavor. The place was extremely ill-kept. Wind whistled through a broken-out place in the colored glass of the door, and leaves and debris littered the rotting veranda. No one answered Clayton's first knock. He was about to turn away when a woman's figure appeared abruptly, coming around from the side porch, her footsteps making no sound, Clayton noticed, as did his own. Lightning picked out her ample form, clad in a dark dress of some kind, and her round white face framed by untidy grey hair. She did not offer any greeting, merely stood there, part of the darkness. "We'd like a room for the night," Clayton began. "My wife and myself. I noticed your sign. You do take tourists, don't you?" There was a long silence. The woman simply stood there, regarding him gravely. She turned her head, taking in the parked coupe, then looked slowly back at Clayton. "No." Her voice startled him with its odd quality, high, vibrant, like the sound of wind blowing through a crack, and as toneless as that of a deaf-mute. "No," she repeated. "I don't take tourists anymore. Not anymore, no." She peered closer at him, eyes only dark holes in that white moon face. "You're not like us, are you?" she asked softly. Clayton laughed and shook his head. "My Yankee accent, you mean? No, I'm from Chicago. We're just passing through. Well, you say you don't take guests. I wonder if you direct me to the best hotel. We've been traveling since daybreak." The woman continued to regard him silently. Then she shook her head. "You won't like it at the hotel," she spoke, still in that hollow, toneless voice. "No accommodations anywhere in town if you're not used to things like us. We don't take no strangers much here, anyhow." Clayton stiffened, compressed his lips. "Indeed," he snapped. "If it's a question of money, of course I intended paying in advance." Wind stirred his hair, chilly with blown rain. Somewhere a shutter creaked and banged against the house. At the sound of it, the woman shivered and pressed against the wall. "Pay in advance," she echoed dully. "Oh, that? We don't worry about that around here anymore." She laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "You can stay here if you like, sure, but I'd drive on to the next town if I was here." She stopped short, cringing like a whipped animal as another gust of wind shook the eaves. Sidling over to the porch rail, she peered anxiously up at the sky, clinging to a rotting pillar as if for support. Yes, she mumbled. "You'd better drive on pretty fast. The wind is rising. Toward dawn it'll be roaring like a freight train. Hear it, roaring in the distance?" Clayton frowned, looking up at a forked display of lightning. "The wind?" he echoed and laughed. "You've got keener ears than I have. All I can hear is rain on the roof." The woman shook her head gravely. "You can hear it," she whispered dully. "If you really listen, you and your wife better be driving on before it's too late." Clayton eyed her, quizzical. He shrugged, grinned. "Well, good night then. Sorry to have disturbed you so late. I suppose we'll have to drive on anyway if the accommodations here are so poor." He frowned at the sky, clearing now toward the west. "You really think there's a windstorm coming up? Those clouds don't look so very. The woman turned on him swiftly, shaking a gnarled finger. "You can't tell," she whispered sharply. "That's just it. You can't ever tell what wind is liable to do. I must close the shutters." Her voice lowered to a mumble, and she scuttled around the side porch again. "Close the shutters and put the garden chairs inside." She was gone. Clayton took a step after her, then grinned, shrugged, and returned to his sleepy wife in the coop. "No dice, darling," he reported ruefully. "This Evansboro seems to be the jumping-off place. The old lady here advised me to drive on. Says there's a bad windstorm coming up, and us with no windshield wiper and only one headlamp. Better get that fixed if there's an all-night service station." His wife sighed. "Well, whatever you say. Oh, do sit still, McTavish." The dog was pressing close to her now, shivering and whining nervously. All at once he lifted his muzzle and gave vent to a mournful howl. Clayton and his wife laughed, trying to quiet him. "My sentiments exactly, pup." Myra laughed wearily. "Well, better get some gas too, darling. Looks like we're doomed to drive all night." They inched along between dark canyons of buildings, half seen whenever the lightning flared. But the streets, on closer inspection, were not so deserted as they first appeared. Shadows moved here and there, dim human shapes. Faces looked out at them from the storefronts. Clayton commented. "A few folks are still up and about after all, though I don't see how they find their way around. Confound these dark streets. Guess something must have happened to the electric current. Probably cut it off as a storm warning." He leaned out the window, scanning the dark storefronts, until at last the white shape of a filling station slid into the radius of car light. Turning in, he pulled up beside a rusty gas pump, sounding his horn. Its raucous blare shattered the silence into 1,000 eerie echoes. And abruptly a lean, sallow-faced youth appeared out of the darkness. 5 gallons of 20-cent gas," Clayton ordered. "And fix that headlight, will you?" The man stared at him without speech, and made no move to obey. Clayton scowled at him. "Hurry up," he snapped. 5 gallons. The filling station attendant blinked at him, nodded dully, and moved to the rear of the car. Something clanked, and Clayton thought he could hear liquid gushing into the gas tank. Presently the lanky youth came around to the front again, shielding his eyes from the headlight's glare. He stood there stupidly for a moment, poking at the lamp. Then, "Mister, you got a short. I don't think I could fix it." His voice, like that of the old woman, was high, tremulous, and devoid of tone. A gust of wind whistled through the car just then, rustling the road map in Clayton's hand. The filling station attendant shuddered as it did so, staring up at the sky. The rain had stopped, and a few stars were peeping out between the thinning clouds, but there was terror and apprehension on the youth's sallow face as he scanned the northwest horizon. His mouth jerked, Clayton saw, and his dull eyes were like the eyes of a drowning horse. "Mister," he whispered, "you better get going. There's a twister blowing up. Hear it roaring through Logan's Pass? 1 minute you don't suspect a thing, and the next minute it's on you. Just sweeps everything flat, and then it's gone again. Hear it? Listen, it's coming." Clayton frowned, listening intently. There was a roaring sound in the distance, but it was accompanied by the wail of a train whistle. The night sky was clearing rapidly, and the remaining wispy clouds moved not at all, as though wind-driven. But Myra, straining her ears, was growing nervous. Animals, she recalled, are sensitive to weather signs, and the dog in her lap was shivering violently. It bared its teeth at the serviceman in a way most unusual to its friendly disposition. Suddenly it gave vent to another howl, and dived for cover under their feet. Bob Clayton fumbled for his billfold rather hurriedly, and extracted $1, held it out. The youth took it, hardly glancing at him, cavernous eyes fixed on the horizon, His face in the headlight's glow was pasty white and distorted with terror, blind animal terror that made Clayton's flesh crawl. "Coming through Logan's Pass," the youth mumbled. "It's headed this way. We're right in the path of it. Mister, you better drive like the devil. Maybe you can outrun it, and maybe not." Myra clutched at her husband's arm, trembling. "Bob," she whimpered, "this is tornado country. I'm scared. Hadn't we better leave the car and hunt a cyclone cellar?" Clayton shook his head, stamped on the starter. No, darling. We'd better run for it. Didn't you hear what this fellow said? This cursed town is directly in the path of a twister coming through Logan's Pass. But what are you folks going to do?" he demanded, facing the terrified youth again. "If you got cyclone cellars, why don't you just evacuate the town?" The thin-faced attendant stared at him dazedly, like a child in the path of an oncoming truck. "We can't do that. This is our home," he said dully. "And running away won't help anyhow. A twister moves too fast. If it wants you, it gets you, and that's all there is to it. There's no escape for anybody." Clayton snorted. Under his hand, the gears clashed and the coupe swung into the highway again. Sweat beaded his forehead, but he smiled reassurance at his young bride. "Don't worry, darling," he laughed. "We'll be miles away before any windstorm blows up around here. Even if it catches us, we can drive the car into a deep ditch and have perfect protection." Stepping hard on the gas, he drove off with a haste that belied his calm exterior. The shapes of buildings straggled out, then merged swiftly into treetops as they left the little town behind. Clayton crouched over the steering wheel, gas feed jammed to the floor. The coupe lunged, skidded, rocked crazily, held to the road only by the skill of its driver. Myra Clayton huddled in her seat corner, wide-eyed and hugging the terrier in her arms. Now and then she glanced fearfully at the sky, almost clear now and studded with stars. Her ears ached from listening for an ominous roaring above the purr of the engine, but no such terrifying sound broke the peaceful stillness of the countryside. Her husband was listening for it too, neck muscles tense with apprehension. Destruction, doom from out of the sky, flattening everything in its path, if they could not outrun it. The coupe sputtered without warning. Clayton pulled at the choke, stared at the gas gauge in horror. It measured empty. With a second cough, the car jerked to a halt, and the engine died. "Out of gas!" Clayton exploded. "Why, we can't be. I just got 5 gallons back there in Evansboro. Oh, Lord," he groaned. "Miles from nowhere. A tornado coming, and this had to happen. Darling, we'll have to push it into that ditch and just pray." He leaped out, cursing. Myra Clayton, clinging to the Scotty, climbed out after him. "Oh, Bob," she whimpered. "What are we going to... Oh!" She screamed suddenly, flinging herself into her husband's arms, as, unheralded, a tall, gaunt figure looked out of the darkness, blinding them with a powerful flashlight. Clayton's blood froze. He cursed himself for leaving his gun in the glove compartment, wondered wildly if he dared make a dive for it, when, "Howdy, folks," the man with the torch greeted pleasantly in the mountain twang of the area. "Y'all know you only got one light?" Clayton breathed out in a gusty laugh of relief as the man came closer, revealing the glint of a deputy sheriff's badge on his overall front. "Thank heavens," he burst out. "Listen, Sheriff, you gotta help us get away from here. There's a twister headed this way. They just told us about it when we drove through Evansboro." The lawman leaned against the car deliberately, unshaved face calm and humorous in the reflected light. "Young fella," he drawled, "I got my orders to run in every drunk driver I come across. I smell liquor on your breath, and you're sure talking wild enough. Evansboro is 14 mile on up the road from here, and if there'd been any storm warning in this county, I'd have been the first to hear of it." Clayton's jaw dropped, then shut with a snap. "Now, see here," he clipped out. "I had one drink, yes, one, right after dinner in Silver City, 4 hours ago. As for the twister, 2 people in Evansboro, whatever town we just came through, warned us it was coming through Logan's Pass." The sheriff chuckled, jerking a thumb at the stars. "Out of that clear sky?" he snorted. "Young fella, the last bad wind we had through here was in 34. And February and March is the months from, not July. If you ain't drunk, you're crazy, because the last town you strike before you get to Evansboro on this highway is Saltersburg, 20-odd mile back where you come from." Myra moved close to her husband, mouth open in indignation. "That's ridiculous," she exploded. "We stopped in Saltersburg for cigarettes almost an hour ago. Don't you stand there and try to tell us we didn't come through another little town just a few miles back. The deputy eyed her and spat carefully. He looked over his glasses at Clayton, then rather sadly shook his head. "I gotta lock you both up," he announced apologetically. "The way you was hellin', pardon ma'am, coming down the highway, then you stop right sudden and start gabbing about a twister in a town that don't exist. You all ain't in no fit state for night driving, ma'am, for a fact." Clayton was bristling now. Weariness and the harrowing events just past had frayed his temper to the snapping point. He took a step forward, fist clenched, but his wife caught his arm. "Wait, dear," she said evenly. "This gentleman seems to doubt our word, but I'm sure we can convince him. Officer, if you let us have some gas, we'll be glad to drive you back and show you the town we went through. But tomorrow, please, after the tornado strikes, I have no desire to be blown through a tree tonight, even if we were drunk, which we're not." The deputy stood erect again, sweeping off his greasy hat with some embarrassment. Clayton grinned. The fellow was evidently a moron of the lowest order, and Myra was handling him the only way possible. Now he gave her an apologetic bob of contrition. "Sorry, ma'am, you can't allus tell, you know." He coughed. "As to the gas, I'll sell you some right enough. There's a can up at the house, but honest, there ain't no town between Saltersburg and Evansboro, not even a tourist camp. You look on your road map whilst I go after your gas." He turned and vanished into the night again. Clayton glowered after him, then deliberately pulled a stack of road maps from the glove compartment. There was among them, he recalled, a special state map. Almost every anthill along the highway was marked on it, and a town as big as the one they had just left would surely be included. But, frowning over the local map a moment later, he shook his head, puzzled and chagrined. There was no sign of a town marked along the route between the 2 cities. "This beats me," he murmured, then scanned the sky apprehensively. "No windstorm yet. They couldn't have been kidding us, could they? No, 2 separate people, and they both looked terrified, saying they could hear the wind roaring in the distance. But look at that sky. There's certainly no sign of a twister around here." A few minutes later, when the mountain sheriff had filled their tank with gas, Clayton faced him sheepishly. "Look," he said, "I paid $1 for gas at that town back there. I'll prove it to you if you'll ride back with us. It can't have been more than 5 miles. Besides, I have a few words to say to that filling station attendant. They'll gyp you a gallon or 2 sometimes if you don't watch, but we wouldn't have given out of gas if he'd put in any at all. Probably some vagrant pulling a fast one on me with a locked pump." He grinned. "Maybe you'll make your arrest tonight after all, Sheriff." The deputy spat again and rested one foot on the running board. "Won't tomorrow do?" he drawled. "Your wife here looks mighty sleepy, and we got a extra room. You can sleep there tonight, and we'll drive back and nab your gas-chiseling fella right after breakfast." Clayton smiled and nodded at once. "Sounds wonderful," he laughed. "I'm so tired, I don't know my own name. And my wife is worn out, I know. Mind our having the pup with us?" "Nope, not a bit," their benefactor assured them. "House is up the hill a piece, I'll show you. But say, young fella, that stuff about a twister coming through Logan's Pass, Why, who'd have told you that? Must have been an old timer funning with you. Since the government blasted for water power 10 years ago, one side of the pass has been leveled out flat. Don't hardly anybody remember it was ever there." He climbed into the car, shaking his head, and pointed the way up a narrow by-road off the highway, at the end of which a white clapboard farmhouse perched on the hilltop. After breakfast next morning, they piled into the coupe again and headed back down the highway. The fresh green of the vegetation looked innocent and peaceful. A clear blue sky brightened as the sun rose, cloudless and serene after the rain. "Twister," the sheriff snorted, grinning in good-natured derision at Clayton and his wife as they rolled along. "Somebody sure is a practical joker in this town of yours, selling you fake gas and what all." Clayton said nothing, but his eyes met those of his wife curiously. Half the night they had lain awake, puzzling about the town that was not on any road map and the windstorm that had not materialized. Watching the mileometer, Clayton looked ahead and suddenly pointed in triumph. "There! Here's our town. I knew we couldn't have imagined—" He broke off, staring, a little pulse beginning to throb at his temple. "Good Lord," he breathed. "I can't believe it." For the rows of buildings along the highway as he slowed down could hardly be called buildings at all. Crumbling shells of moss-covered brick loomed against the sky, desolate and inhabited only by nesting birds. The shattered hulks of old houses, sometimes no more than one rotting wall or a vine-hidden chimney, reared from foundations overgrown with grass and weeds. In front of one swung a battered sign Clayton remembered. "Guests," it read. But the house beyond had no top story. It was torn off as if by the hand of an angry giant. No one could have lived inside, no one but kindred of the spider and the bat. There was no sign of an old woman with a white round face, scraggly grey hair, and terror-dilated eyes. Dust lay undisturbed on the rotting porch, save where a man's footprints had mounted the steps and come down again. "That's—" Clayton's voice was strangled, his face blank with unbelief. "That's where It can't be." His dazed eyes swept the one-street town where not a house, not a building stood which was not smashed beyond reasonable repair. The giant's hand had swept across the entire village, battering, smashing, destroying as if in one brutal gesture. Parts of other buildings lay in front yards. One small outhouse hung half in, half out of a gaping hole in the wall of a crumbling colonial mansion. A great oak, jerked out of the earth like a blade of grass, lay through the center of a crushed bungalow. The sheriff's guffaw startled Clayton from his trance. "Oh, this is your town, eh? Why, it's been deserted for years, ever since the Twister in 22. "Twister?" Clayton swallowed with a dry mouth and felt his wife's cold hand slide shakily into his own. Did you say?" "Sure," the deputy chortled. "But it wasn't last night, young feller. It was 17 year ago. Worst we ever had, I recollect. Wiped out near about everybody in the town here. The rest moved away. They couldn't afford to rebuild, and there wasn't much to hold 'em here anyhow. Why, I just never thought about this place when y'all spoke about stopping at a town nearer than Evansboro. Nobody stops here, not even hobos. Some dang fool story about it being haunted." Myra Clayton edged closer to her husband in the car seat, wide-eyed and silent. The dog in her lap whined softly. "It's natural folks would cook up some such tale." The sheriff was rambling on cheerfully. "When the Twister struck here, nobody had received any storm warning, because the Weather Bureau didn't dream it'd be such a bad one. Freak wind in July it was. Nobody was prepared for it, so of course hundreds was killed. Some of the unidentified bodies was buried on the spot. 2 tore up to ship. July the 12th, 1922 that was." He drawled, then grunted. "Say, that was exactly 17 years ago yesterday. Funny coincidence." But Bob Clayton was not listening. He had turned the coupe and was cruising back down the highway to where a white stucco filling station squatted forlornly between the wreckage of 2 stores. Slowly, he braked the car and climbed out. Slowly, not daring to look at his wife, he walked up the drive-in and paused beside a rusty gas pump, empty and hoseless by daylight. He knew somehow what he would find there. Bending down, he picked it up with an unsteady hand. A dollar bill. The dollar bill he had laid in the palm of a pale youth with a deathless terror in his hollow eyes, terror beyond the peace of the grave, terror that had let neither him nor hundreds of others in that lost town rest since a yellowish cloud had roared down upon them from the sky, almost a score of years before, waiting, all of them, in a terrible bondage of dread, for the twister to strike again.
If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time,